Hey fuckos. So, a thing that's really important to me is how the hand interfaces with the sword. This is really important. Like, it drastically affects what you can and cannot do. It turned up to fucking 12 is like an Olympic fencing pistol grip, where that's just ergonomics turned up to fucking as high as possible. I adore that. If I get a hand injury that makes me not hold swords correctly, I'm just getting a pistol grip and we're all gonna fucking live with it. But you see, like, the idea of having a finger over the quillion, or two fingers over, or your hand interfacing with the quillion, is a form of interfacing, is a form of caring about the ergonomics and how you interact with it for available actions and interactions. So I've got this malleus here, which is very bog standard. I say that, but I've also like used a lathe and fucking got rid of half this pommel and just like shrunk it right the fuck down so it doesn't dig into the this part of the wrist, the hollow here. So it just doesn't dig into it as much when you squeeze. So yes, it makes it a bit more tip heavy. Oh no, I want to be able to fucking not hurt myself every time I make an action. Wild concept. But if you look into it, you have this block here. Some swords make that block way too big. Some sword makers, without knowing the drastic effect it has. Because the bigger this is, the wider the fingers have to be. The wider your fingers are, the less they can actually interface and interact with the thing they're holding. The weaker they are because they're in straight extension. So the closer to a true fist you can get your hand to, or something along these lines, the more you can squeeze and get the fingers literally closer and interfacing with the rest of the hand, the stronger it becomes and the easier it is to make adjustments, which is really neat to me. So this, how did I, because I edit all my friends' swords. This is actually one of my best friend's swords. I sat there on Australia Day and just fucking modified it at a friend's place who, Checkers, Rita, or Sean O'Brien. If you look at him on Instagram, he makes beautiful armor, and I spent like half my Australia Day fixing and editing people's swords while we were fucking around in his workshop. It was great. I've just gotten rid of the ridge here because as your hand interfaces here, this part of your finger interacts with the bar here. So the more rounded and chill that can be, the closer to a circle it can be, the better. Now if you can hear like little like weird noises, it's because it's my cat playing with a ping pong ball and I love her, and why would I ever stop her? As this interface is here, you need it to not give you the shits and hurt every time you fucking do an action. Like if you do a false edge interaction or like lift up your point, you don't want that to go. It only needs to be just enough for there to be suddenly a delay in all your interactions going forwards. And I love it. I was like, oh yeah, you're allowed to make these light edits, and it's important that you do. What else I edit on this? Here, where your finger wraps round. Now we're not doing like bad fucking I don't know what I'm doing one finger over quillion where you just make a fucking hammer fist and there is a bar in between these fingers. But you do like soft finger hook. I'll be able to show it on my rapier better, but something like this. So the way that your tip of your index, which is important, the very tip of your finger interfacing with things is so important for fidelity and reading and understanding what you're feeling. Making that corner here just a little bit more 45 so that as the finger presses on it, you've actually got a wider position that you can feel what's going on and actually press into it with some force without it going, ow! Ow, I'm touching a remotely not sharp thing that is sharp enough to cause slight damage on my fingertip every time I interface with it. High bar. Now, one of the things which I experienced with a Spanish rapier from the 1700s, it belongs to a guy in Victoria, but because I do these kinds of consultations with Tim Harris, the swordsmith. He's one of my best friends in the world, so you should buy his swords. But almost every sword he makes, he brings to me, and I give little critiques on what to do and what to go back and change. Because I've worked in workshops, because I've worked with tools, I know how much of a cunt doing metalwork is. I'm not just being a fucking nerd. Like, I actually know how to fucking work in a workshop, and I know how much of a prick of a thing doing certain things is. I give him consultation on what he should change to make the use of it more joyful and easier. So he ended up being given a historical rapier to study, this Spanish rapier, and it was fucking cool. Part of the interfacing things that occurred, that as I was holding, I'm like, cool, brilliant, big brain, that's rad, was this entire bar here. I'm going to show it with my Timot rapier, because you can just see what the fuck's going on better. So this entire bar was flat stock-ish. So I had the effect of flat stock. So like you can see my quillin here, pointing at the camera. You can see that it's wide and thin. So it was like that, and then the blade came through this way. Then as you got to the outside of the cup, it was round stock. So I'm assuming that they've made a round bar, then flattened it in this place, right along here. Which I thought was really fucking neat. What that caused was, as your fingers wrapped around and two fingers over, you had width this way that didn't matter, and the smallest width this way possible, that the fingers did not had the least amount of stretch out between here, which I fucking loved, because it meant that you could just hold the thing and it never gave you the shits. It never see, this stretches out ever so slightly. Now, a lot of people will probably say, oh yeah, that's not too bad, you'll just get used to it. When it comes to interfacing, you don't want to get used to these things. Not good enough is not good enough, and you want to improve it, because then you carry that perfectionism and that pedantry and that improvement into everything you do, and that's where you get disgusting, putrid development of little changes. Oh, it's so fucking cool to me. So this, I would say, is incredibly thick compared to examples I've felt that have made me go, why the fuck doesn't mine feel like that? That's cool. What else was cool about it? It was pained because it was a real rapier. Now, I honestly just think fucking this thing that Malleus has going on is cool as fuck. I love it. Because it's like this bolt is like bolt fucking nut. Nut. It's like this fucking long. So it's like a sleeve, and it sits in, and then this interfaces with the tang as a rectangular shape, and then this goes on the threaded part of the tang and does its tension. So this cannot rotate. It directly interfaces with the geometry of this, which I think is really fucking cool. But I think it's patented, so like, I don't know, do what you're legally allowed to do with that information. So I think that's fucking based, because painting a real sword, sure, if you only use it once, it's fine. As long as it doesn't fucking break, right? When it's our sports equipment, it's a bit fucking, oh, now my shit's rattly and I can't tighten it. So that's why I'm rambling about this. It was pained, but it was 1, 2, 3 lumps of metal of varying sizes that were hand fucking shaped. And it was kind of ugly as shit. But the balancing on it was fucking brilliant. It was just 3 separate pieces of metal, then painted over. And it's like, oh yeah. And they were actively smaller than the greatest protrusion of the handle. Which meant in full extension like this, there was no protrusion into the wrist, and you could just punch into positions. Ah, fuck, that was such a joy. When you've got that, and then you've got this here, the wider this is this way in relation to this line, so the further the front edge is from the back edge here, the more it stretches out the hand like this, which means that this part of the hand interfacing with here gets more awkward. The more you can close this section, the more this section can interface here, and you can actually like really get that top edge either pressed in or like pull back. Where right now this is stretching me out ever so slightly with 2 fingers over, which is just enough to cause light irritation. Somewhat, you think of like a marathon runner, or even a sprinter, or a 400-meter sprinter, whatever. If I put a rock in your shoe, you're going to run pretty fucking jank, and something is going to glitch every time. You can't ignore the rock. In an actual like fucking Olympic level fucking monster, if I put some sand in your shoe, I'm going to cause an injury that's going to fuck your training for the next 3 weeks. Because it'll just... We shouldn't accept that in our swords when we can. So, this, you can see my older videos where the quillen block here is a typical dark wood style quillen block. You could tell that this is my project piece car. I have modified the fuck out of this, and if there was space on it to put a chop sticker, I would fucking put it. Because things I've done to it are like, cut here, extend quillens out. Cut here, extend quillens out. The reason that I did the cut here and did the weld there is because the weld is just weaker than the piece of metal. If I did it here, it would have been weaker at the end of the lever, where here it is monumentally less likely to snap due to my welding. What else have I done to this? These plates did not come on it. That was inspired by some of the rapiers within Tybalt. This pommel used to be quite pronounced. These lines were the same depth the whole way through, so just assume something like this. And that was to match the 45-inch darkwood blade that was on there that handled like a minivan. It was cool. I learned a lot with it. Woody Craig learned a lot with it. It helped us develop as fencers, and now we do not touch such things. Other interfacing thing with this. So like as I hold that, the way that affects my interfacing here is now in my extension. It is slightly less pressure on the inside of my wrist, which allows slight turn in not being a problem. And on my extension, it doesn't go and just cause a slight pressure on the inside of my wrist. Because if there was a slight pressure on the inside of my wrist every time, when I would extend, something turned up to 12 would be like this, where you can see my arm is straight, but my point veers off this way. That wouldn't be cool if under stress I keep missing my thrusts, hey? If I just take it into account, there's another plate I'm spinning on a fucking stick that I can drop and miss. We want to limit how many plates we're spinning while maximizing how many plates we can spin. I can just choose to not have the problem. It's got a Castile blade. I am under the firm belief that Castile makes the best fucking blades for historical fencing at the moment, besides the Musketeer blades by HF Armory. I think those are fucking based. As a training tool, they're fucking sick. But if you don't want the triangle for some reason, or those blades just don't interface with your furniture well, then Castile is fucking sick. I currently have it's their most standard, their cheapest option, their most standard option, and then I took it to the grinder and took off like a millimeter each side until I can fit these foil blunt tips on there. It's like a 43-inch blade, and it moves like a fucking 34. It's great. Other interfacing things. So, we had that cooling block that I have absolutely dementedly affected. And we're just gonna, experience that. So I'm gonna take my damn sword apart. When this was using a darkwood blade, we put new tang on it, or the round stock part. So that is because it snapped. When people get smashy and rapier, sometimes you can have your tang get snapped. Pain in my ass. And it's usually the darkwoods. For whatever reason, a darkwood tang snapping is as reliable as I don't know, there's something about people being cursed about the new Nosferatu movie. There's a joke there, but fuck me. Now, Jesus Christ, have I affected this. So, if we have a look at this. This is the side that my thumb goes over. This is the side that my finger rides around. So I do a tip-out grip with this because I fucking like that book. Who'd have thought? What I've done is I've minimized how much width is here, just next to the cooling block where you start to interface with the bars. But also, I have no idea if it'll show up. Along here, I've ground it down at a 45-ish. Let's not get pedantic because we're trying to interface with humans that are not perfect. So that when my finger goes over and it hooks into the blade here, it is the least painful kind of shape that I can muster for the inside of my finger. And also here has been ground down on the other side so that this part of my finger also, as it sits here, I can pinch here, ideally without maximizing break potential or bend or plastic deformation. I'm trying to limit that, but also trying to limit how stretched out my fingers are. Because the closer to this I can get, the easier and more comfortable the position is, the easier it is for my thumb to come over the top. Cool. Now the original quilling block was quite pronounced up to, you'll be able to see in previous videos, it was so pronounced that I was changing my grip to take it into account and my thumb would end up sitting here. I don't like it, but I couldn't do this because it was a triangle that ran down the middle of the blade, so to put my thumb over here would mean I'm just digging into the point of a triangle on the quilling block and just hurting my thumb. So there's no intuitive action of putting my thumb there, right? Kept grinding it down, kept getting rid of it so I could interface with the ricasso with the blade with my thumb. And every time I felt that a part of my thumb was digging into a piece of metal at the same time as interfacing with that blade, because then I've got a slight hump or a slight hill, I would get rid of it within a couple of weeks. This has been a slow modification of this. Same thing would happen with my finger wrapping round. If my finger wrapped round and interfaced with the point and protrusion of this triangle, it would fucking hurt right here, and it'll grind away at my gloves and grind away at my finger. Ow. There's a rock in my shoe. So slowly taking it down this way and also laterally like at this angle, so that I wanted to keep as much mass here as does not protrude or be intrusive, so that we maximize contact with the blade for this interfacing with the blade. But never at the expense of my finger fucking not wanting to touch the damn sword. If I don't want to use the sword, I'm not gonna use the sword. Wild concept. So my finger has enough room that it only interfaces with the ricasso, so that as this occurs, I can have this beautiful pinching action with the least amount of obstruction from my hilt. So it still digs into my fingers a little. It's almost like I'm holding a piece of fucking metal. But that's fine. Now for the last part of how I've affected the quilling block. Let's have a look at this. This is very asymmetric. I have admitted I am right-handed, and I just admit that I wanted to feel good right-handed, not shit both right and left-handed. The fascination and adoration of perfect symmetry is quite a new concept in humanity. And when it's a one-handed weapon, you don't get best of both worlds. You get shit at both worlds. So just admitting it's a right-handed sword, there is a percentage of people that can't use my sword. That's okay. They couldn't anyway, because I didn't want them to put a fucking set in my blade. So, I have ground this down as much as possible, and I don't want my thumb actually interacting with the hilt here, because it is a separate object, which means that the amount of feedback and fidelity and sensitivity and touch that I feel from my ricasso gets limited if it needs to go through one object, then however the metal resonates with metal, then I process it. That dulls it. It makes it foggier. It makes it slightly imprecise, and then I need to infer and I need to guess more. That sounds shit to me. So as my thumb rests into that blade, your thumb isn't a fucking hot dog. It has bony protrusions. It has ligaments and tendons to it. It has meat. It has nails that you've been biting since you were 4 years old. Maybe. And now you're incredibly embarrassed for the internet and the world to see your fingertips. But anyway, this bony protrusion here, if you've got fucking big padded bullshit gloves that make your interfacing with the sword suck balls, well, like, yeah, cool, this isn't the video for you. If you wear like what a bunch of people in Melbourne wear, which is foiled gloves, or maybe saber gloves, but they got a bit of padding, that's just like not gonna be the difference by any means. So I encourage people to wear like Coach's foil gloves. I say the Coach's one because it's kind of cheaper, it's black, and it's not white. It's literally it. Just use a foil glove. Fuck. Your thumb, you can feel what the fuck's going on. So as we get into feeling how different parts of our thumb interface with pieces of metal, you've got thinness here. you've got bony protrusion due to the joint, and then you've got thinness again, and then like a little bald stylus thing, which is the tip of your thumb. If this was perfectly flat, then my thumb lines up over the top and it touches the ricasso and it's fine. And then you get a very slight irritation every time you let this bony protrusion dig into the quillen block. And that very slight irritation means that you expect to impart X amount of force to create an action, create a shape, create a acceleration, movement, whatever. And it slightly hurts. There is a rock in your shoe. And then you don't put in the force you expected to. So then you find different ways to create maybe this turn that don't hurt your thumb. And they can sometimes be imprecise, slightly delayed, incorrect, overzealous, overly strong. And then there's a glitch that you wonder why you fuck the action every time you do it. I finally got this to a shape that I fucking love because I've used the rounded part of a file and gone at it at this angle, so it also avoids my bars, and I've just gone so that this bony protrusion has somewhere to go into, which allows more contact from the rest of the thumb in a way that doesn't hurt. In a way that doesn't hurt. I'm really getting close to just a fucking pistol grip. Transmogged is not a pistol grip. Which way does my blade go? This way. Jesus Christ, I have fucking thrusted someone recently. Jesus Christ, I have thrusted my floor recently. There we go. So, as my index wraps around, here is soft and kind, this angle here. Here is as flat as I can muster so that my fingers don't get stretched. And also the distance between this side and this side is minimized so that, because every like quarter millimeter increases how much turn the finger can like actually fit. These were this fucking big on each side. All I could do is put my finger like this. And it's just enough that wrapping round hurts the least it ever has. And the more the hand can wrap around this way, the more the thumb can end up on top along the blade. The more I've gotten, like you can see this shape here, the more I've gotten rid of mass here, the more this bony protrusion can sit in and not be a separation point. Because if it does this, then my thumb sits different, and then my hand sits different, and then my hand gets opened up. So I want to get as close to this as possible so that I have as much thumb as possible touching the blade and no pain. And no pain. Now, as I've also taken off the corners here, and I've taken off the corners here, it doesn't dig into the side of my finger. It doesn't dig into the bottom part of my thumb. It doesn't dig into the underside of this finger between the two, as it slightly pinches here. These are all things that have helped my fidelity and comfort making intuitive actions. Your sword needs to help you make intuitive, intelligent actions, and if a slight makes it not fucking happen and you kind of need to overcome a whole barrier every time you do an action, It is the same as a jacket that does not fit. It is the same as pants that don't let you lunge because the gusset at the taint is non-existent. Thank you, Spez. Like, if you can't fucking do if to do the action not under stress is arduous in its own right, how in the fuck are you gonna do it when you're stressed? As an idea, maybe. Who the fuck am I? Finally, there is a cool interfacing thing which this handle Darkwood made. I love this handle. This is like a fucking $600-800 handle. It is so much money, and I've treated it like clown shit. The wires have been snapped a bunch of times, and I've had to fill it with epoxy, and it's gone green because it's reacted to the copper to my sweat. But there's something so cool about it that the general size is a typical Darkwood shape, and I think the handles are a bit thick. I'm above average size, says every 5'10" dude ever, but like I am above the average of humans in size. The handle's too big for me. Every Darkwood handle is too big for me. That means that you're not catering to you're only catering to a smaller demographic of people, which is people well above the median of human proportion. This is a problem. But this handle has these beautiful lines all the way through it. This cross section. What those little ravines do is there is an ever so slight meat and fabric. So the meat of your hand, the fabric of your glove, ever so slightly can go into those ravines. This isn't just to increase friction or anything as base as that, but it has the effect of it having the silhouette of a bigger handle, and yet your hand slightly interfaces with it as if it was slightly smaller. And I love that. That brings me joy. I love this handle. I think I want a thinner handle. The reason I mentioned the tangs breaking on the Darkwood blades, I absolutely forgot that I didn't finish that thought. I've got these little sleeves because when we changed the round stock, we just put on thicker round stock so it would be less likely to snap, which means that my pommel's been bored out. I think it's an M6 now, but this is an M8 or an M10. No, an M8. Yeah, mate! So putting this sleeve just makes my fucking tang wider, which is cool because I don't know what it's made of because I got it off AliExpress. It sure could be stainless steel. It could be fucking lead. But what's really cool about having this is it deforms. It has slight plastic deformation, and the play between the threading on the inside and the outside and it being on the bar, on the threaded round stock, means that there is a slight amount of cool tension that is emotionally reminiscent when you tighten it of having a leather washer between the pommel and your handle, or your handle and the quilling block. I think that's kind of neat. Just for the like as you tighten it, there's wiggle room and there's play, and you can feel it go into position opposed to just hit the harsh limits of this 3D printed handle. It's not like smashing into a wall, but actually like going into a locked position, which I absolutely fucking love. As you tighten it, that you're like, ah, yes, there isn't a that I need to like, come on, a little bit tighter, and then you just wrench your fucking threading off. Or if there's gonna be a break between the round stock and your tang, it's going to exasperate it. Just as another modification that my sword has experienced. So now, as I line this up, we have a width here that allows some meat and glove to go into the handle. It lines up perfectly with here. This of my pommel pretty much extends my handle by this much. My handle is this much longer due to the shape of this pommel. This is cool to me, which means that it sits in this bony protrusion. Oh, beautifully. I would actually have my handle and this much shorter now if I could muster, due to how my fingers interact with this, because I used to have a longer hand position, something more like this. I know it hurt, but here was beautiful. But now that it's easier for me to choke up and in, this is slightly too long for me. Oh, how tastes and feelings change, right? But now as I hold it, it sits right along the blade with my thumb. That bony protrusion has space that allows me to interface with the ricasso where the quilling block is not in my way. And now turning actions, moving my tip, getting my quillins up into position. My index finger can dig into just the very side here and hook to get this into position. And I can play off it and slide my thumb up and down to change the relationship in my hand. I can hook in to allow any of these or turns. All the comfort of doing those actions comes from meticulously making that shape in service of being able to do the actions I want to do. Every time I'd make an edit, it would be a very slight irritation. I begin the edit, it would feel better, but then every other problem about it shines brighter. So in actuality, every time I'd make an edit on my sword, it would get worse overall. Only because I could feel the next bigger problem that I need to affect. I could have left it how it was from the start, and then a lot of my personal improvements in fencing probably may never have occurred. That'd be quite depressing. But instead, every time I just admitted there was a problem, accepted it, and accepted I must change it, with almost neurotic energy, I would fucking fix it. This is a problem, it must be fixed, it must be edited, it must be changed, or I'm gonna lose sleep. And now it's like, come to, oh, I fucking love my sword. Other people pick up my sword and they go, oh, what in the fuck, why doesn't mine feel like that? Because I've spent hundreds of hours now modifying this thing. And all subtly and all with perfectionism and love. All those little edits and interfacing, I now know the importance of. And that's why I consult for a fucking sword maker, to just make sure that things don't fucking hurt. Because there's so many times that I have seen someone get their first sword, they pick it up and move it around, and due to whatever interactions, they have to convince themselves they love their sword and that they like their new sword. And that breaks my fucking heart. I've seen it. I've experienced it. My first sword was a Castile Schiavona from like the mid 2010s. Yeah, I would have a fucking Schiavona. Derogatory. It was 1.5 kilos. It moved like a hog. And I thought it was going to be cooler. The tang broke within a week. It was secondhand. The tang broke within a week. The back quillion got snapped off minutes before the tang broke. That was really depressing. That broke my heart. Like, I just spent nearly a week's worth of wages buying this sword. It was going to be my first sword, and I was so excited, and it sucked. And I was strong as fuck. I was still doing fucking strongman training, and I think I had a comp coming up in not long. So I was fucking gorilla, and that thing was heavy as balls. And goddamn, that thing sucked. I know Castile literally just make better weapons that like to interface with now. Was it Castile? Honestly, as I think about the traits of it, it could have been a Darkwood. Maybe. Or maybe it was just an old Castile and they've just, like, they're so much fucking better now. Oh my god. I just said before, like, their blades, like, just the easiest suggestion to buy now. It's cool as fuck. So, like, don't take this as a, oh, Castile bad. No, Jesus Christ. Like, they've developed like the rest of us. But it broke my heart. There is a video in someone's Google Drive where I am definitely hiding, and you can kind of see it. I'm hiding the disappointment as I picked it up. We've all, no, everyone who is a judgmental cunt, everyone who can feel and admit problems, has experienced that and bitten their tongue. You can develop that feeling and that idea and that observation skill to make your sticks better. The most recent off-the-shelf opposite feeling I've had for that was the Siggy lights. That was like, oh my god, why doesn't swords feel like this? And the absolute most recent has been a Siggy light Maestro. Like, where it's just got a bit more fucking shield. With a non-wasted handle. Because a wasted handle ends up making your left hand squish too much in a way that is not conducive to putting the fucking stick in the place, depending on your glove shapes. Longsword gloves can fuck off. But that was like the most like, oh, that's fucking nice. Same with the Siggy Rapier, was like just a pleasure to pick up. I think it's a bit fucking chonk, but I believe the idea is that it's a rapier that longsworders like. And I think that's based, like, getting people in a rapier from longsword off a rapier that emotionally transitions you from longsword to rapier really well. Mwah, beautiful. I'm not the demographic. I still like it. I still like the sword. But I'm not the demographic for it. Probably one of the more egregious ones I'm reminded every time I pick it up is the Kvetten sabers, like the Easterns, where you pick it up and you're like, God, this handle is like that day in high school when it was sex ed, and of course they hand fucking dildos out for people to practice putting condoms on it, and you hold that dildo and you whack your friend in the side of the head with it. That's what that fucking handle feels like, because it stretches out your fingers, and you've got to wear fucking big padded gloves because everyone must, or their dicks will not work, smash you in the fingers while you stab them in the face. Like, I fucking hate it. And they're using a fucking Mad Eastern Type 3 fucking saber too, and you're like, I hate this game. This is bullshit. That thing, the shape of it is so not conducive to you thrusting that it just sucks. Because it maximizes the pressure here and here, so that when you try and straighten it, you've got to open your hand in such a way to create space for that handle that your point struggles to go online unless you're hurting your wrist about it. Amazing. I fucking... I have lost comps because of borrowing one. I fucking hate those things. So I don't know, I'm like going through experiences of interfacing. This beautiful saber that's like a cavalry saber, and I can't even remember the name of it. But it's got a big choppy blade. Fucking, it swings like a straight bar for the top, then an almost L shape, like a perfect 90-degree that flares out, so it's kind of thin and flares out like a triangle as the knuckle bow, and the handle is super thick, so it sucks as like a fidelity put the point forwards, but that's fine, because when you hold it in hammer grip and you're like, oh yes, if I was on a horse I would not be able to fuck up whacking someone with this. And the blade shape just lets you sail through. The stick works. It's not a fencing implement. It's like, I can see its job. It was never to, like, if I had to be off the horse and fight someone with it and it was on my hip, you know what, for God and country, let's figure it the fuck out. But it wasn't built to be good at that. It was built to be like a hand lance that hits with the side instead of the tip. Like, for its design brief, you're like, yeah, brilliant stick. And that interfacing was so cool. It was just like, how did you make it perfect? It also had like a thumb ring, but not an obtrusive one, where if you made a thumb ring that small and that dainty for a fencing implement, it would take 6 fucking bouts of fencing the dumbest man in the room for your thumb to be now trapped in a thumb ring. But that's because it wasn't built for that. It was built for the bare minimum that it helps the interfacing without being obtrusive. I thought that was really cool. It was really fucking cool. So those have been like some experiences of interfacing that I emotionally remember and feel how it affected how I wanted to move. And as you listen to that, you're like, okay, how does my sword let me move if I got rid of 1/4 of a millimeter to give space for this bone, to give space for this meat, to adjust the angle that my finger digs in? It's so worth it. So fucking worth it. Yeah. So that's a big rundown of like some experiences I've had with swords now, of modifying them and affecting them. The interfacing is important. What modifications you can make are important. Work with your sword makers if they're local and if they care. I am incredibly blessed to have Tim Harris as one of my closest friends in the fucking world, and I get to work with him, and I get to go into his workshop, and I get to like just make modifications, and I get to help make those modifications for other people's swords, so that when they pick it up, they go, huh, feels pretty fucking good. Why? What is different about this? Why doesn't my other mass-produced ones feel like this? It's sick. When I first started asking Tim for these edits, he didn't really know me. And he kind of fought back, rightfully so, because too many people in HEMA have never fucking touched a lathe in their life. Or they've never fucking touched a grinder, and they don't know how hard doing something to a particular spec is, and how moronic it is to get that neurotic on the raw numbers on your spreadsheet. And he's like, well, I'm not making fucking F1 cars, Mosh. Like, there is a good enough, and you just need to be better at fencing. I'm like, yes! This little edit will make me better at fencing, watch. And then as he experienced me making those decisions, making those choices over and over and over, he got to see like, oh, there is fidelity and interfacing that is uncharted territory, something disgusting. And it's so cool to me. I originally learnt these ideas from modifying and affecting, of course, swords, but LARP swords. And I would just do it for my friends' LARP swords, and I would do it for mine. And I used to put Rowling's Waster baskets on Calamasil bastard swords and make broadswords. And there are those kinds of broadswords all over the world now, because we saw one dude give it a crack, and then he gave me his attempt, because he's like, yeah, I'm never going to get around to finishing this. And I fucking made hundreds. It's fucking sick. But that interfacing and feeling like, oh, well, how does the sword inform what I can do? How does it get in my way? What are the points of irritation? So I already did it for hundreds of swords, and then I was like, oh, steel swords are sick, and how can I do it more with metal ones? So you should go along a similar experience. Be nice to your sword makers. Learn how you... Don't guess how you could make a modification. Go into someone's garage and look at how you would do it, so that when you talk to a sword maker, they don't hate you. They don't go, you are aware there isn't a tool in the world besides a hand file that'll fit in that, and that'll take 6 hours, you piece of shit. Like, don't be that guy. But also don't go like, well, this is good enough. Don't accept mediocrity. Unless you do that in the rest of everything you do, and then, fuck, you just wasted 53 minutes of your life being told to be better than mediocre without being told to be better than mediocre until now. Hopefully this develops some cool thoughts and develops some ideas on what you want to do to your sword and how you want to modify it. Life is very fucking short, you may as well. I want to hear about ways that people have modified their swords and affected them. Not in like the Facebook page, illegal fetters and sketchy mods, which is one of my favorite fucking pages of all time, and the fact you can't post in it anymore makes me depressed. But I want to know what you do to modify it. 1, because it'll make me better. 2, you experiencing that and constantly innovating means that we have hundreds of people doing it, not one delusional fuckhead getting the last say on a handful of swords as they get made. Thank you to everyone who has been subscribing to my Patreon. That helps me pay my fucking rent. That helps me care about this as much as I do. I'm very fucking honored. especially considering the quality of these rambles and one-shots. The fact that it seems enough that you want to get early access to these, because that is all that gives. It helps me pay my rent and eat, and you get 2 weeks early access on every video. That's it. As much and as little money as you can put towards it means I get to still exist in a time when all of us caring about our arts at its most precarious. So thank you all so much.